We all saw it. Some of us may be still in shock. What does it mean? What does it mean for the future? These are the guys to ask right here at Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We're here every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern Time. Steve Hellwagon up top from Bucknuts. Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop as well. Oh, boy. It is the postmortem of postmortems. That phrase is thrown out from time to time, but this would be a historic postmortem. So, Steve, starting with you, what in the world happened?
Well, they turned back the clock to 1995, and Tim Biakabatuka ran all over Michigan, or all over Ohio State, and Michigan upset Ohio State and denied them the Big 10 championship, and in this case, instead of the Rose Bowl, the college football playoff. Curiously enough, Michigan can now win the game on Saturday against Iowa and put Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. My, how times have changed. But who would have ever thought the Rose Bowl would become a consolation prize? But that's where we're at in the year 2021. And Ohio State picked a terrible time to play just an awful game, and awful in all three aspects: offense, defense, and special teams. Out-coached, out-played, out-hustled, out-worked, out-physicaled, all facets. And it was a decisive 2-touchdown win for Michigan, their first over Ohio State in 10 years. And in everyone's life, a little bit of rain must fall, it seems like. And that's kind of what we ran into watching that game on Saturday.
Tony.
This felt like a lot of pent up anger and frustration and just want to from Michigan. And it was a lot of, this isn't how this goes from Ohio State. Like, this is
confusion.
Yeah, it was
confusion.
What's going on here? And
I thought we just showed up and threw our helmets on the field if we won this game every year. Not this year.
Not that time. And you almost feel like no, I don't know how many people in the program in any cursory way, maybe some of the practice security guards have been around Ohio State for a Michigan win and or loss to Michigan. And so this is a first experience for everybody. And a lot of these guys haven't even been around for close games against Michigan, which Urban Meyer had almost on an annual basis. And so, like, all these guys have ever known is 56-27, 62-39. The situation last year where Michigan declined to play Ohio State. So that's what they have known. That is the Michigan they have known. And Michigan was like, no, we need to reintroduce ourselves, I guess. This is, hello, good to meet you. Nice to meet you. And it was not such a nice meeting for the Buckeyes. And they got beat up. They got, I don't even know if exposed is the right word. They just didn't seem to want to be there as much as they thought they did. And I think they came to that realization pretty quickly.
Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know what else I can really add to it. I mean, the stories are that, the flu was going around the team. None of it really mattered because Michigan just seemed to be a step ahead of Ohio State, maybe 3 steps ahead most of the way. CJ Stroud still put up pretty decent numbers, but it wasn't what people were used to seeing. There were some drop passes. I mean, Ohio State's run game didn't look like what we expected to see coming out of the Michigan State game. It just wasn't, it wasn't a great game on offense, and it was not a good game at all on the defensive side of the ball with Hassan Haskins running wild against them, giving up 297 yards on the ground to the Wolverines. It wasn't a case of where Ohio State was able to make Cade McNamara beat them. Even though Cade McNamara was able to complete some big throws, Denzel Burke looked like he was well south of 100% in the game, really not interested in tackling people. I mean, had been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue. You sit there, you beat Michigan State the way that you do. I mean, nothing really kind of came to the surface on that. But, I mean, he was out there, incomplete. And Michigan honestly just got Ohio State out of its game. I mean, with the little skirmish between Cam Brown and a Michigan defender, where strangely only Cam Brown ended up getting flagged. And it was a flag that was only worth about a yard. And then the skirmish that happened in that crappy tunnel there at Michigan Stadium between the two teams, Michigan absolutely got Ohio State out of it. And, I don't know if Ohio State even... it just wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't meant to be in that game. And it's a sad thing to say because, this is a really good Ohio State team. It's going to be one that we're going to talk about for years and years and years in that big what if conversation over beers, but at least beers will be had.
Well, we can either go big picture, what does this mean for the program, or we can stay on the front of the nuts and bolts of what happened on the field. And I know you guys have been talking this nonstop, writing this nonstop ever since it happened, but that's kind of what you do. And with everything else going on in college football, I've been somewhat distracted, but at the same time, you can imagine I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours being asked about what happened as well. So I'm going to start with this. The two keys to the game out of many, but the two paramount keys to the game for me, Tony, started with the defensive ends for Michigan and whether Ohio State was going to count on their tackles to take them on one-on-one or they were going to provide some help. Now, in the aftermath, I'm not going to try to act like the genius who said this before the game, but in the aftermath, I'm thinking the one aspect of this game where Ohio State stayed in the game is because they are so brilliant at throwing and catching the ball. Otherwise, my goodness, I don't know what it would have looked like because they still, for as bad as it was, that ball makes it over Aiden Hutchinson's head fingers by that much into the arms of Travion Henderson to make it a 35-27 game with 4.5 minutes left. And I'm thinking they could steal this. They are getting so outplayed, but they could steal it. Okay. You've got these great receivers. Do you really need Jeremy Ruckert out? I know he's going to be playing in the NFL, but help out these tackles. Number one, my number one thought while this is going on. Number two was just the optics of the Oregon ground game and how effective it was versus the Michigan ground game looked to me totally different in that Oregon was just as effective, but it like Ohio State, you guys were at the game, but watching on TV, Ohio State defenders weren't even in the picture half the time. It was like from a scheme standpoint and assignment standpoint, they were completely fooled most of the time. Where Michigan, the holes weren't huge. They just pushed down the field, just beat them up and bullied them.
Yeah, I think the Oregon I chalk up to scheme. When they can run to one side of the field or the other and there's nobody there, then that's a problem that was a different problem with the Michigan, even though there were times where Ohio State got schemed up and got out leveraged. But I think a lot of it, Michigan's success running the ball is because Ohio State stayed in the nickel. And did they stay in the nickel and had six guys in the box because they only had three healthy linebackers maybe, and two of them play the same position. So they didn't really have the number of linebackers that they needed to handle the Michigan running game, even though I think you'd see sometimes this year where teams are fine handling it with the nickel, but you've got to get those guys in the picture and in the box. And so that was surprising that Michigan was able to run the ball like this because that's not something they have been able to do routinely. And it's something that Ohio State has been able to stop routinely, even playing their 4-2-5 defense. The Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, that was the number one thing. Go in, stop those guys, whatever it takes. And yeah, I'm with you. Chip, keep the tight ends in, help CJ Stroud. And he was under duress for most of that game. I think 45% of his snaps or his dropbacks, he was hurried or pressured, and he was fantastic there. And I wonder if Penn State got sacked 7 times by these guys, by Michigan, and Michigan still almost lost. So I wonder if there was some thought from Ohio State, like, we can give up some sacks and still be in this because we are a better offense than Penn State. And as long as there are no forced fumbles or turnovers, you can withstand some of that. But there was very little downfield because he didn't have time. the inability to throw downfield was, I thought they would be able to do that more because they would have time, but they didn't. And so, yeah, I'm with you, those two factors. And it keeps coming back to, over the last 20 years, the team that runs for more yards per carry wins the game. And Michigan, I think, more than doubled them up and made it not even close.
Kevin, as I ask these questions, I can fire questions out for the next 5 hours about this situation, both on the field and again as it goes forward. But I want you guys to talk about whatever you think is important here. I think that there might be a difference between what, a lot of people criticizing Ohio State for not wanting to be there. I think there can be a difference between having an assignment and doing your best, really trying hard, and giving it your best and feeling like you're giving maximum effort versus like being on a mission, being obsessed, being just, whether you're inspired by fear or by hatred or disgust or frustration, and just running everywhere like your hair's on fire and just refusing to be denied, being relentless, Kevin. And that just seemed to be the difference. I didn't question Ohio State's effort necessarily. I'm sure in spots it could have been better. I'm sure it could have been better. But I just think Michigan, maybe there's a fragile psychological switch between being supremely confident, and then once that gets challenged and you see that maybe you're vulnerable, that gets flipped quickly, versus Michigan knowing that they were good. And once we talked about it last week, and I'm sure you guys talked about it a million times amongst yourselves, if Michigan got some positive things early, that spurring on their confidence.
Well, I think Ohio State really hadn't taken a punch this year. And I know that Ohio State, you can go back to September 11th, week 2, they lose to Oregon. So obviously they tasted defeat, but I don't know, maybe you look at that as a case of, oh, well, they got a lucky shot in, we weren't ready, whatever. We've fixed some of these issues. We're no longer a single high defense. We're doing this, that, and the other. And then Michigan throws a punch. And it's like, ow, you sons of guns. What the hell was that? And they just didn't know how to respond at that point. And, Michigan finally rededicated itself to the rivalry, and maybe that there was some belief, and I don't think anybody's going to openly admit it, that Ohio State had grown kind of complacent in the fact that, well, we always beat Michigan. So what's there to get worried about? We got to sit there and be keeping an eye on Wisconsin and Iowa and Georgia and everything else. And, did Ohio State, there were a lot of things that we've seen Ohio State do with great success that we didn't see in this game. Was the game plan too narrow? Was the thought that maybe we're just going to come out here, roll it out there, and be able to win the game, that we don't need to have this? And it's not like you can take something from 6 playbooks ago and say, well, we're going to just throw this out there. If you don't practice it during the week, if it's not installed, it's not something easy to go to. So, I think that this goes to all levels. This is, I think that some of the preparation, I think some of the game plan, I think some of the execution. It was just a really bad day for Ohio State on all fronts. And, this is a Michigan team that played a hell of a lot more inspired than what I saw against Rutgers 7 weeks ago. Hell, Rutgers should have beat them. And, Rutgers stymied that rushing offense, and Ohio State couldn't do anything with it.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, all valid points. I think, you look at, again, there's no one size fits all answer in a game that, let's see, I just got the stats here. Total plays, 79 for Ohio State, 61 for Michigan. So there were 140 plays in this game, which is probably about right. Usually you run about 70 plays on each side, 60 to 70, whatever it is. And so there were a lot of variables and a lot of things that happened depending on down and distance and the score and different things and different looks and different things. But just in a nutshell, Michigan came out and they punched Ohio State in the mouth, and Ohio State didn't respond. And so Michigan said, okay, we don't have to take a step back after punching them in the mouth. We can continue stepping forward and punch them in the mouth again and again and again and again. And when Ohio State never really had the answer, the crowd got into the game. It was extremely loud there at times, which it usually is not all that loud at the University of Michigan. People talked about it as being one of the louder games they'd ever attended there. And I made this point on another show that I did. In the modern era, there's a couple games that stand out for Ohio State. And one of them is beating Miami for the national championship at 2003. And another one is beating Alabama in 2015 in the playoff after the 2014 season, because they'd never beaten an SEC team, I don't believe, in a bowl game, unless you count Arkansas, which was kind of stricken from the records anyway. But for whatever, a real SEC team, let's put it that way, to keep everybody south of the Mason-Dixon line happy, because they still don't claim Arkansas as one of their own. But at any rate, that was they'd never beaten Alabama before. So everybody thought Alabama was going to win the game, and Ohio State struck that blow for Northern supremacy and went on and won the national championship almost as an anticlimax after that. Well, this was Michigan's Alabama game. This was Michigan's Miami game. This is the biggest win they've had in 20 years, and it gets all this off Harbaugh's back. And you just get this sense that, maybe there's a sense of relief, a sense of accomplishment for Michigan, and it should be, because Ohio State was the number 2 team in the country and had deserved, it appeared, to be in that spot. So, but didn't play like it, obviously, on that day. I thought C.J. Stroud, given everything that went against him, being put behind and down in distance all day long by his left tackle, his right tackle, and his left tackle, between holding penalties, false starts, and giving up sacks, which I didn't feel any of those were really his fault. There was maybe one coverage sack out of the 4. So I just feel like he stood on his head, and he kept Ohio State in that game. I think his yardage total is the second most ever by an Ohio State quarterback against Michigan, too shy of what Dwayne Haskins did in would have been 2017, I guess. So to my way of thinking, this game was lost in the trenches. Front 7 on defense just didn't play up anywhere close to their capabilities. And, what can you do? Some days, you get the bear, and someday the bear gets you. And they got trampled by the bear this time around. And next time around, it'll be different. I have a feeling that they've already sown the seeds for Ohio State to come back and whip their ass next year in Columbus with some of the things they've done and said here in the few short minutes after that win. They should have just taken it, signed their scorecard, and moved on to the next hole. They chose not to do that. So they've kind of made their bed, but we'll see if Ohio State in 2022 can make them pay for that.
I'm talking about too much college football across the nation to pick up on some of these things. So I'm not in tune with what we're talking about. So what have we heard out of Michigan?
Well, Gaddis came out and said Ohio State was soft, which they were, but that's not something that you, as one of the opposing coaches who has to play them again in 363 days, would ever come out and say publicly. The comment from Jim Harbaugh that some people, are born on third base and believe they hit a triple. Well, who in God's name did anybody think he was referring to? He was referring to his little lover's quarrel with Ryan Day, where allegedly last year on a Big 10 coaches conference call, he brought up, we got some teams out here practicing with pads and blah, 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 and doing this during the COVID hiatus, pointing at a picture of Al Washington, his former employee, out on a field with a tackling dummy, which he shouldn't have had apparently. And Ryan Day told him, shut your mouth, take care of your own business, whatever. And then behind the scenes alleging he was going to, run it up on Michigan. They don't seem to like each other. So, whatever, that's fine. You're 1-5. Congratulations. And, we'll see if you ever even up that record. My thought is you probably never will.
Yeah, Mark, some people win one game and think they've won 3. It's weird how that happens like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can look at that a number of ways.
Hutchinson, I give Hutchinson all the rope. He was a player. He's lived it. He had it run up his butt. He'll never play him again. And Ohio State guys, same way in the past, have beaten Michigan and talked trash, knowing they would never play them again. That's fine. They played the game. He's writing checks he doesn't have to worry about cashing because he's never going to play another down of football against Ohio State. Bully for him. He made comments that shared the emotion and why this happened behind the scenes, is that we really did take this seriously this time. In the past, Lawan and all those other guys and Redemption Tour, or whoever that was,
Winovich.
Yeah, had said all these things, but never once did anything to back them up. Well, now that they won the game, Hutchinson explained how it happened. So I didn't have a problem with him doing it, but for the adults in the room to kind of, bring some of these things out in the public, I understand their frustration and their thought of, we got to beat our chest because we finally did something here in our 6th, 7th, 8th year, however many freaking years it's been. You finally won a meaningful game out of 90 games you've coached there. You finally won an important game. Great.
It's the first one since 2003 that's meant something outside of the rivalry.
Yeah.
That Michigan's won. It's been a long, long time. So, Tony, here's the question that nobody can answer. Only time will tell. Is this an end of an era? Has this rivalry flipped? Or I'm going to cite two rivalries out there. So there are rivalries all over the place that are lopsided historically that will always be that way, or seemingly. Oregon State would be one. But I'm talking about two rivalries that should be, at least in the modern times, closer. You got, but there is an obvious hammer and nail situation between Alabama and Auburn. Even though they play close games, Alabama is clearly the program in the SEC. Oklahoma State. Well, those games have not been, or those series, as dominant as Ohio State and Michigan, but that team that's dominant but still loses more frequently than Ohio State still maintains dominance. So could this be just a blip, to take the positive tenor on this, just a blip on the radar? It was going to happen at some point, but Ohio State's going to continue to march on.
So you're asking me if the end of the world is nigh, or is this simply 2003 or 2011? I think it's.
We're waiting to hear, Tony. Yes, the world is waiting for your answer.
I think you look at the recruiting, and Ohio State is still on a different level than Michigan in terms of recruiting, the overall depth and the overall talent. So I don't see this. I don't think Ohio State will continue to win 8 in a row or, 11 of 12 like that. That shouldn't happen. That's what happens in this series, though. It fluctuates. Sometimes, Michigan is 10-2-1. Other times Ohio State is 17-1 or whatever it is over the last 20 years. That's not normal. To get the better of a rival, you should win 6 out of 10. That way, like six times in a decade, you've got bragging rights over the decade, or even splitting. That way, at least you haven't given up bragging rights. At least you're not getting talked down to. But this is going to be something for Ryan Day. They all now finally know what Michigan has felt, and they've only felt it once. So is once enough to stop everything? Now, the good news is Ohio State plays at home next year against Michigan, and you should always defend your home turf, and you'll be better suited to win that game doing it at home. So I think for me, that's one way that this can be put to a stop immediately, as you play at home. 2, Ohio State was pretty young this year. They're going to return a lot of talent. I don't think Aiden Hutchinson is coming back next year. Michigan has no replacement for him in the pipeline, and they've got some other seniors that they're going to lose. And, so I think Ohio State is better next year. I don't know that I can say the same thing for Michigan. And then Michigan also has to play in Ohio Stadium. So I think that's going to be bad news for them. But also, like, Jim Harbaugh should be winning 2 of 5. Like, win your home games against Ohio State 2 out of every 3 attempts. You should be winning. It is a rivalry game. you should be winning it. You shouldn't be the nail to the hammer. So I don't think anything is flipped. But now there's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day because he's 1-1 against Michigan, because last year's game, Michigan declined to play. So there was no outcome from that one. So now Ryan Day is on the verge of next year. He has to win or else he has a losing record against Michigan, which is crazy to think given where these two programs have been since he got here and since Jim Harbaugh arrived. So I think people can calm down. Unless they lose again next year, then go crazy.
Tony mentioned recruiting, Kevin. When I think Ohio State recruiting, I think you. So do you think, and this is the impossible question again, we'll have no idea, do you think this significantly in any way impacts recruiting, the result of this game?
No. I mean, no, but it doesn't hurt Ohio State, in my opinion. I think it might help Michigan a little bit, but Michigan isn't recruiting against Ohio State. They're not recruiting the same kids. So maybe Michigan lands every kid in Massachusetts now. I mean, because that seems to be where they're recruiting. I think it gives them a little bit more street cred, a little bit more validity with some of the kids that they're going after. But I don't think Michigan is going to come into the state of Ohio and suddenly start getting every, Desmond Howard, Charles Woodson, Mario Manningham type of situation. We're not going to see that happen anytime soon, especially after one game. With Michigan going and recruiting in the Southeast, maybe it makes it a little bit more viable for them just because, while players, their ultimate goal is to get to the league, whether that's, winning, going 12-0 each season or going 9-3, nobody wants to be on the wrong end, wants to be that nail to the hammer in a rivalry game. But I don't see a situation of where Ohio State takes a direct step back based on just the outcome of the game. Now, if Ohio State suddenly decides to completely reshuffle the coaching staff and has no continuity going into December 15th, the early signing period, you could see a temporary blip on Ohio State's recruiting radar because players want to know who it is that they're going to be playing for. And you don't sign up for a school necessarily because of the head coach. You sign up because of the position coach, because that's who you spend the most of your time with. You're not, unless you're a quarterback, or maybe at least on the offensive side of the ball, sans the line, you're not spending a ton of time with Ryan Day. You want to know who your guy is going to be. So the way that this could hurt Ohio State is if they sit there and just make a snap decision to make all of these changes without having a plan in place. So you need to have a plan. And my phone is blown up since the game, during the game. XYZ coach needs to go, blah, 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 blah. So who are you hiring? I don't know, but they just need to go. Well, say goodbye to your class. If you do that, you better have a plan in place.
We talk Ohio State football with these three each and every Wednesday. We hope you appreciate it. Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts on 247 Sports. Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. And Buckeye Scoop must really be loaded with talent. My goodness, what are you guys doing over there? Tony Gerdeman, also from Buckeye Scoop. And check out their work on a regular basis and their various platforms. Starting with you, Kevin. What do you got going?
Well, I don't have a game to prepare for this week, so I don't have a tail of the tape. I actually just, while we were on the air, I just published a basketball story about Ohio State all-time against number one AP teams. Their record is 10-11, which is pretty darn impressive. 7 out of the last 9 with Ohio State not being a ranked opponent. But as for football, I'm going to be doing a podcast here on Friday, breaking down the major conference championship games. Sorry, Mountain West. I'm not really that concerned there. Looking forward to seeing what a bowl opponent we'll have for Ohio State and kind of moving forward with that. And then, of course, Ohio State's going to be looking toward the coaching ranks, transfer portal, signing days in a couple weeks. So plenty of stuff going on.
What you got, Tony?
Kevin is so right. Things are moving way too fast. We can't even get to championship week before you're chasing stuff down and trying to find out. You're looking at the planes and flights from one place to another, but just recorded a podcast about bold predictions for the championship week. I threw one out there. See what you guys think about this one. Both teams in the ACC championship game will score more than the current over under the Michigan Iowa game, which I think is like 43.5. Also, I just posted today the Ohio State's possible pathway back into the playoffs. And
I got to hear this. How's that work?
And I did not do this for me. I did this because it's a question people are Buckeye fans want to know. Basically, if you think Notre Dame still has a road, then Ohio State still has a road, and I'll get into that. But here's number one: there are a couple rules. We know Ohio State is not going to move past the SEC champ. They're not going to move probably past the Big 12 champ. Probably not going to move past Michigan. So you have to have Cincinnati out. You need Alabama out. And so they have to lose pretty convincingly. It's a good idea for Utah to, again, beat Oregon. So now that leaves Ohio State and Notre Dame 5-4. Notre Dame has one loss. They do not have a conference title. Ohio State has 2 losses. They do not have a conference title. However, when you get to the championship week, past the championship week, the committee can now weigh whether or not you have a head coach. And they can put as much weight on that as anything else. And Ohio State does have a head coach. So does this now become a situation where if you are –
oh, good Lord.
Who do you want? Do you want Ohio State or do you want Notre Dame in there? And knowing Notre Dame has not performed well in their 2 opportunities in the playoffs, Ohio State has performed better, and they have their coaching staff relatively intact. Who knows what their head coach is intact? That might be the only intact coach that Ohio State has. But that is the possibility. And I'm still thinking in the end, the committee would be like, you know what, let's just take a 2-loss Alabama. That's just easier for everybody.
So based on your scenario, Georgia's in. Michigan wins the Big 10 championship, correct?
They're in.
Because we don't want to mess with Iowa.
Ohio State can't move past Michigan even with a loss.
So you might as well have Iowa out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Big 12 champ is in.
Who else is in?
Big 12 champ.
Okay.
Because I think Baylor would even jump Ohio State possibly, even though it is of noteworthy that Baylor did drop a spot after winning this past weekend. So the committee, we know, does not love the Big 12. They really seem to like Oklahoma State, though. But I still think Baylor probably, would they win over Oklahoma State and a conference championship, gets in over Ohio State. Do they get in over Notre Dame? That's a different question. Because also, guys, when you're comparing Ohio State and Notre Dame, let's look at that Purdue game. Notre Dame beat them by 14. Ohio State beat them by 28. Notre Dame's best win is probably that Purdue game. Ohio State's best win is a 49-point victory over the number 11 team in the committee's own rankings. Not saying it's going to happen.
I'll see you all in the Rose Bowl, though, because that's just probably how it's going to play out. But 2007, we saw craziness happen.
Wouldn't that be
98 had some
phenomenal?
craziness happen there. I mean, granted, it was a different structure. So
This year has been already crazy. Look at the chalk that we all thought was going to be in the playoffs. Where is it?
Yeah, I think what pokes a hole in your scenario is they have Notre Dame ranked ahead of Ohio State now, and neither team can do anything. I know there's been a development as far as the head coach.
Notre Dame can do something. Hire a head coach.
That has nothing to
That has
do.
nothing to do there, but it's still a perception
nothing
thing.
to do with their body of work.
Perception thing.
But now it does.
Nothing to do with their body of work.
But
or
now
what the players accomplished.
Right.
I think it has zero. Honestly, if they were, it's weird that he's leaving before that's been settled. I'll just say that. I don't understand why he couldn't have waited 7 more days until it was official that they weren't going to make the playoff. Bleep that. Just
no,
bleep.
I'm being serious. National
that.
Signing Day is 15 days from now. I mean, absolutely. It means a lot. If you're coming in there, LSU doesn't have a quarterback.
It's important, but it ain't that important. It ain't that important. I come on.
So the next 4 or 5 years, not important.
I think the early signing day
portal, they can go out and get whoever they want. I mean, I
The
I
early
don't
signing day
agree.
is-
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what he did. I don't agree with what LSU did. I don't agree with it. I know it's you can't change it. It's fair market system, but and the committee can't hold that against Notre Dame. There's just no way. And Notre Dame's ranked ahead of Ohio State now. You can't move Ohio State with no games in the interim. You can't move Ohio State ahead of Notre Dame. There's just no way. There's just
You're looking at this rationally. Are you new here?
I know.
Have you not followed what's happened in Grapevine year in and year out? Come on,
They don't-
Steve.
they changed it to fit
We've
their-
had many beers and talked about this committee many times.
They have changed it to
looking
fit
at this
their.
from this cold analytical way and not from a realist way. And the realist way is they can do whatever the bleep they want to.
They've changed it to fit their final outcome that they want any number of ways. I will grant you, but this would be a bit much.
Technically, Steve, regardless of a team playing, their resume changes the next week. So Notre Dame's resume is going to change, even though they didn't play. The teams that they had played, their resumes changed. Therefore, the strength or weakness of the schedule. So with
Notre
a
Dame's schedule was
Michigan
so
victory
bad.
in the Big 10 championship game,
Excuse me.
with an Oregon victory in the Pac-12 champion, well, we don't want that.
Well, I don't think
But
that
with
has
some
any
other
impact
outcomes
on
across
Ohio
the
State,
country,
whether Oregon wins or not. I don't think
I'm just trying to figure it out.
You lost to them. I don't think, it devalues your loss. I don't know what that even means. My question, did Notre Dame even play anybody who's in a conference championship game? I guess Cincinnati.
Besides Cincinnati. Yeah. That's it.
I don't know.
The other thing, and just to go back about the coaching, like they don't look at a player who is absent or a coach who is absent until after the championship game, after the conference championship games. Now they will project what kind of impact does this have? Would this impact the kind of matchups we can make? And I think it absolutely does. And so I think it just depends on how much weight each of those people in the committee will put on it. The other question I have is we're talking in this theory, this practice we're doing, we're talking about the number 4 spot. Georgia's going to be number 1. Is Alabama in that race? If those two teams, if Georgia just beat Alabama, is the committee really going to put Alabama there, a 2-loss team at number 4 to have the same game again? Like we just saw it happen. What's the point of that? And so then does that help a team? Does that take Alabama out? And I think if Ohio State and Notre Dame are put together, don't be surprised if the committee goes with Ohio State, because again, they have a head coach and they have a better win than what Notre Dame does. And as we've seen, the committee likes the wins. They don't necessarily get overly concerned with the losses at times. But again, me trying to predict the committee, I understand that's a fool's errand. We all know that. We're just talking here. It's a show.
It's a television show.
Michigan State, Penn State, Purdue, even Minnesota are arguably better than Notre Dame's wins, with Purdue being their ceiling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got all of that, and then you still need 3 tumblers, 4 tumblers to fall the right way to even have the discussion. So
Houston has to beat UC.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff
At
before
UC.
people either get excited or outraged about Tony's scenario. I mean, things have to happen first before you get there. So
I want to see outrage. That would be hilarious. That would be phenomenal.
We're just all here trying to do some content, y'all.
Well, does anybody think that that Iowa can beat Michigan? Because I was driving to Michigan on Friday, listening to the game on Sirius, and it just Iowa was awful. I mean, Iowa was just god awful for 3 quarters, and yet by about the middle of the 3rd quarter, you started getting this sense that Nebraska's not entirely out of the woods here, and backup quarterback throws a pick, get a punt blocked. And I likened it. I said, this was like watching Lucy Van Pelt pull the football away from Charlie Brown, but she did it 1 frame at time. And you could just tell over about an hour and 15-minute period that every 5 minutes that football was being yanked another inch or two away from Charlie Brown's reach, and another inch or two, and another inch or two. And I mean, Iowa's god awful. It doesn't matter if it's Petrus, Padilla, Peterson, Patrick Peterson, Patrick Pass, whoever. It doesn't matter who their quarterback. It doesn't matter who their quarterback
Peter
is.
Putrid, yes.
Peter Putrid, Pat Patterson, the former wrestler. It doesn't matter. They can't move the ball. If Michigan loses to them, it's because Michigan shot its entire wad against Ohio State and stayed up drunk all week to celebrate, because I can't imagine.
So you're saying that if they return the opening kickoff, live bet the hell out of that thing, because we've seen that before.
I don't know. I don't know how that happens. And I presume, obviously if Michigan wins, Ohio State's the highest ranked Big 10 team, goes to the Rose Bowl automatically. There's no selection committee, this, whatever. If they slot the teams and Ohio State's 5 and the final rankings are 6, then they're going to the Rose Bowl. They're playing the winner of the game Friday night, which we've already seen. Utah beat Oregon at home at Utah 38-7. Oregon, are they going to give them a better game this time? I don't know. Who's favored in that game? Is Oregon favored by 3 or something in that game?
Utah by 2.5 or 3.
Okay, it's the other way. Utah favored by 3. So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I was trying to pull up the odds as well.
Yeah, Utah by 3.
Yeah, Utah by 3. Yeah. I don't think Iowa has much of a chance. I mean, exactly as you put it, if Michigan gets fat and happy and goes out and eats a bunch of St. Elmo's and spicy shrimp cocktail and tries to stay out all night and everything else, then who knows? But just based on everything that I've seen of both teams, and I've watched most of the Michigan games, I've watched about half of the Iowa games, it shouldn't really be close. I mean, Iowa's going to have a really good defense, that they do what they kind of do, but Iowa has zero offense, and I don't know how Iowa scores 13 in this game, to be quite honest. So if Iowa can hold Michigan to 21 and Iowa can only get to 10, there you go, and cash your under.
Well, and the over-under is 43.5, and I'm thinking even if it's like you give Iowa 14, I'll take 28-14 and be happy. Give me the under on that one. This is also another one of the bold predictions from this game. This wasn't my bold prediction, but it was 0 touchdown passes, to which then I countered, okay, but pick sixes count as touchdown passes, and then it didn't seem so fun for the other person, Tom, or my partner on the podcast, because I think a pick six, I think we can all see that happening in this game, and maybe whoever throws that pick six will then create either a 4-quarter game or a 14-point deficit that Iowa can't overcome. And I just wonder if anybody can get ahead by more than 2 touchdowns to really put this thing away. But is 10-point lead enough? Like, doesn't that already put it away? And I think probably it does.
Iowa got off to that amazing start to the season based on special teams and defense and defensive turnovers, a margin that was ridiculous. Then they hit Purdue and I can't remember who else they lost. Oh, Wisconsin. So that was the game in which I thought, okay, I picked Wisconsin to win the West. This is the Wisconsin team. And everybody counted them out because they lost a couple games early, but one was out of conference, and even the losses were out of division, which were going to help them in a tiebreaker situation. So Wisconsin fell into the situation I thought they would. They hammered Iowa head-to-head, I think proved that they were the better team. But then they tripped up the final week of the season and opened the door for Iowa, and I don't think we have the best team in the West in the Big 10 championship game.
No, you look at the last 4 games for Iowa, aside from that, the 2 losses in a row, then they had a 5-point win over Northwestern, 5-point win over Minnesota, 10-point win over Illinois, and a 7-point win at Nebraska. There is very little offense there, and there's enough defense, but the style of offense that Iowa plays helps their defense out, and they do have some players, but I think this is just gonna. It could be 20-0. I mean, it could be 13-12-0. I mean, it just really, really ugly. That's why I will have the ACC championship game on the other TV. I'm not sure which TV I'm going to be muting, though. I may be having the Big 10 game on mute. I'm not sure.
The Minnesota win is credible. Minnesota's not great, but it's a credible win. But other than that, yeah, ever since they got off to that hot start and then they really looked horrible, those 2 losses, they've not been good. Northwestern's awful. They had to intercept a pass in the red zone to survive that game. And then this Nebraska one, like Steve just pointed out, Nebraska is going to blow a game to whomever else is on the field. So it just doesn't matter, it seems.
Opponent is insignificant.
Lost TBD.
No more than 9 points.
When you hear coaches and players say it's never about our opponent, it's about us. Nebraska, it is about us. I mean, it's about our inability to close. We are not closers. We are the opposite of closers. We cannot close.
They're openers.
They're openers. They're not closers.
Unless you're Buffalo, Fordham, or Northwestern, that is the impact of their 3 wins. Wow.
And they scored as many points in the Big 10 as they allowed.
Yes, they did. You win a game by 49 and lose the other 8 by 49.
It just feels so bad for everybody in Nebraska. Fans, players, coaches, governors, mayors. It's just a terrible couple of years and so close every time. Just
Couple of years, couple of decades.
Decades, yeah. But in terms of just
Decade
close
years.
losses with Scott Frost and so much hope, and each time, they're going to do it, and you just next year will be different though. I got a pretty good feeling.
Not necessarily understanding the comment coming in right there, because we did an Iowa live show last night, and I clearly stated to our Iowa guy, Cory, I don't know that this can be misinterpreted in any way. I said, I don't know how you can score. Number 2, I said, yes, there are historic upsets. We could all sit here for an hour and list off historic upsets that we didn't think were going to happen. So yes, it's possible. Obviously, there are 2 football teams. Iowa could win the game. But basically, I don't see how they're going to win the game. I don't know how I could have been any more clear pushing back on Cory, our Iowa guy, had predicted the Hawkeyes. He just has a feeling that they're going to win. Yeah, so. All right, everyone. Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We do it each Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern time. So don't just enjoy it yourself. Bring some Buckeye fans in here next week. College football fans, you see that our chat is filled with fan bases from all over the place. So regardless of who you root for, come on back and bring some folks with you. Steve Hellwagon makes this happen from Bucknuts 247 Sports and has been so kind to post these videos on that platform. So check out his work. Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop, and of course, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. And appreciate it, you guys. Enjoy the championship weekend. No trip for you to Indianapolis.
No steak. No shrimp cocktail.
No
the way
joy
things have been in the Big Ten, you guys may, along with Ohio State, just automatically pack up and go there, and then about halfway there.
Our team's not playing? What's going on? No Kilroys. No.
All right, everyone.
No walk of shame back to the media hotel at 2 a.m. the night before the game. No,
2 a.m.
No waking up with college game day already over. No.
Don't worry, Steve. There will still be a walk of shame.
Yeah, somewhere. So, oh well.
Well, hopefully those Michigan riders can find their way around Indianapolis. I know it's unfamiliar for them.
Yeah,
you know what I saw, and I won't keep you guys. I saw some Ohio State fans have not been giving up their hotel rooms. They're going to just pay for they're just going to keep it and swallow the costs. And I disagree with it. I love the pettiness of that in terms of the rivalry. I don't think it's kind. It's not brotherly. but it is pretty. It's a little kind of it's kind of funny. There are plenty of
It's
hotels.
kind of funny. It's incredibly funny.
If you've got the money and you want to hang up the Michigan people, feel free. That's crazy. That's $1,000 investment or $800, whatever, 2 nights downtown.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
ridiculous.
necessarily know that's proving. Are you
don't
going
get what
to
you're-
keep that receipt with you and print it out and show people 20 years later that
I had 2 rooms downtown for 2 nights, and those Michigan people didn't get to use them.
Some sort of Michigan fan was unhappy because they had to drive 10 minutes further than they wanted to. After a loss, I guess any type of joy, pain that you can inflict on a Michigan fan, I guess you just have to find it where you can, enjoy what you're able to do, and then make sure you tell other people about it so that you can feel the raise of good job. You should keep doing that. Good work. I'm going to tell people what you've done here.
If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, I mean, you got to make sure that people are aware of it. I mean,
I'm curious what the ticket sales are for that game. Like, is it going to be?
I've heard resale market's pretty hot. I've heard that
Iowa and Michigan people are actually going to show up to
Yeah.
watch the game.
that's what I've heard.
Good.
I
mean,
haven't done any due diligence on it. It's not not that
it's a-
concerned, but
It's a situation where it wasn't like either of them had clinched 3 weeks ago and knew they were going. They both clinched on 7 days notice. I mean, it was not a done deal until other things happened or, something happened 7 days out. So yeah, make a lot of plans at the last minute.
do you guys have a rooting interest in this game?
Well, looking at travel to go to the Rose Bowl, and I've been to 3 Rose Bowls plus a game at UCLA, and not knowing what situation is post-COVID or middle of COVID in California, I don't know that I'm dead set that I have to go to the Rose Bowl again. So from a personal situation, but yet been to 44 Fiesta Bowls in 10 years. So the only other spot's the Peach Bowl, which Atlanta on January the 1st is probably going to be about 35 degrees. So I don't think we have a optimum situation any way that we look at it from our own personal self-preservation situation. There is a chance you could play Notre Dame, I suppose, which you're playing them in the first game of next year. So in some regards, it would preempt the first game of next year if it's Notre Dame. I'm not even sure who else the other teams could possibly be. I guess Baylor or
Ole Miss.
I was going to say if you fall all the way down, where do you get? I mean, if Group of 5 doesn't send somebody to the playoff, I mean, they get stashed somewhere.
Houston,
and if you're
Cincinnati,
I was going to say you could end up drawing that as well.
Yeah,
Could get Cincinnati and Phoenix if Iowa wins.
Well, if Cincinnati wins, then they're in.
But I think
if they
lose,
they're not going to have a spot.
Will they drop out of the top 12 or so?
They'll put them at like 13 probably just to screw them. That way they don't have to take another non-entity, and it's a closed shop. It's the BCS leagues. It's they. As we say, the committee will do whatever the committee thinks is in the committee's quote unquote the Power Five's best interest. So,
and the Rose, if Michigan wins,
one,
they'll choose the highest ranked of the Big 10 teams, and that would be Ohio State over Iowa. So, Iowa
wins the game, they go.
Well, no, I meant if Michigan is in the playoffs, if they win, they're in the playoffs.
Right. If Iowa wins, then kind of all hell breaks loose.
Then it's Michigan versus Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, it should be. Unfortunately, one will go to the Fiesta and one will go to the Peach. But
I don't want to go to Atlanta in December if I could avoid it. I mean, unless you promise me a good matchup, because I don't know how excited a lot of people are going to get about Ohio State, Utah in a Rose Bowl potentially. I mean, I just don't. And it's just not a great matchup. It's just not a great matchup for Ohio State because
there's no
it'd be a good chance to show that you're physical because Utah's plenty physical. Utah's plenty physical for a Pac-12 team. I mean, that's a finesse league, but Utah doesn't play like a lot of teams out there. So, I don't know how much people would be looking forward to that one.
Last time Ohio State played Utah was, I think, my freshman year at Ohio State in 1986, and I think they beat them 64-6, something like that. So
That was the score.
now, obviously, Utah's football program has obviously moved in new directions since then. But yeah, it's.
I was going to say, did they have football before Urban Meyer and Kyle Whittingham? I don't even
Irving
know.
Myers.
Well, you guys all remember the push for a rematch in the BCS championship game in 06, Ohio State, Michigan. Tony, you brought it up. Would there be some kind of, I would think that there would be some powers out there would think that this would be a blockbuster rematch.
Well, and I don't know if the rules would prohibit the Peach or the Fiesta from taking two teams from the same conference. Like, I don't know what their contract states. Like, they have those two bowls, like they have no conference affiliations to where they have to take this or that. But I don't know if the rules in general of the New Year's Six would frown about that. I don't know that. I mean, I threw that up last night in a podcast that we recorded, and it's like, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I don't know. It would catch them up from last year's game, I guess. Call it the 2020 COVID national, whatever. And
I would think it would be a ratings blockbuster.
No doubt. No doubt.
You think it would do better than Ole Miss versus Ohio State, or Ole Miss versus Michigan, or North Carolina State, or Pitt versus Ohio State? I mean, come on. No way, no chance.
Well, I made the point, not only are Ohio State fans, if you want to go to the Rose Bowl, pulling for Michigan, I think Michigan State fans have to pull for Michigan too, because if Michigan wins, it opens a spot for Michigan State potentially to be in the New Year's Six. If not, there's no bowl for them to go to. If you slot Michigan at one and Ohio State in the other, there's no other bowl for Michigan State to go to. So they go to the Citrus Bowl under that scenario. So it's strange bedfellows, Ohio State and Michigan State fans, for the, quote, best case scenario, are rooting for Michigan to beat Iowa.
They're not rooting for Michigan. They're rooting against Iowa.
Rooting against Iowa, yes. I
They're
put that
rooting
on
against
message
Michigan.
board, and I got so many messages. I will never, under penalty of death, root for them. So, it's like, okay.
Phrasing. It's all about phrasing.
I'm just saying, bro. Just saying.
I'm double checking myself. I got that right. In 1978, Oklahoma and Nebraska played a rematch in the Orange Bowl.
Wow.
So they played in the same conference. One of them won the championship. Nebraska won the regular season championship, and the Orange Bowl selected Oklahoma to play Nebraska in a rematch in the Orange Bowl.
I think that they would have to send a trial balloon out to both athletic directors and say, are you guys interested in this? And I'm not sure what the response would be. From Michigan or Ohio State. I'm not sure what the response would be. Why would Michigan risk giving back 11 months worth of momentum to Ohio State? And why would Ohio State risking their ass beat by Michigan twice in a 5-week
double L?
I mean, I think there's risk involved on both sides.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we've already we saw Michigan already duck Ohio State once, so it's no big deal for them to do it again.
It's in their DNA.
Oh boy, that sounds like an ender to me.
Yeah, I think we went out of a high note there.
Although I basically want to say, it would kind of be a Michigan thing to, not do what the Red Sox did when they finally got past the Yankees and you got to complete the run, win the World Series. That Michigan loses the Big Ten championship game, and then could you imagine they rematch Ohio State and everybody's like, yeah, Ohio State's really better. They just beat them.
You know what? In my plan, Ohio State and Michigan will play each other in a national championship game. So get on board with that.
Okay, Tone, I'm on board with it. Let's get the rematch in Indy. How about that?
Perfect.
I like your plan.
Easy flight.
Baylor wins 3-2. You're out. Sorry. No style points for you. Sorry. Out. I don't care. Get your stuff and get out.
Passed you up in 14. Got to pass you up again.
You're a flyover football program. Gosh.
That's the closer. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. Join them on their respective sites and be back here next Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern.